Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Williamson, and I am the Engagement Associate at SMU DataArts. I would also like to take a moment to introduce two of my colleagues, Katie Ingersoll, our Director of Programs, and Dan Gordon, our Support Center Manager for today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us today to learn about the changes we have made to streamline the cultural data profile and how these changes will affect your data entry experience. Now for some quick housekeeping. We do have a number of people on our webinar today, so I'm going to keep everyone on mute for the presentation so that we can ensure good sound quality. At this time, we ask that you take a moment to explore some important features within Zoom. First, the Q&A feature, where you are welcome to add any questions you have about the content of today's webinar. Feel free to add questions at any time. We also have the chat feature, which will allow for you to reach out to our team to help troubleshoot any technology issues that you may be experiencing. And for anyone who may want to utilize the closed captioning feature, to activate that feature, simply click the CC icon for closed captioning at the bottom of your Zoom feed to turn on that feature. If you need any assistance, please feel free to send us a chat. And finally, to preempt our most common question, yes, we will have a recording of this webinar and we will send you a link so that you can review it later or to share with a colleague who was unable to join us today. And with that, let's get started. Recognizing that we're still in some pretty unconventional times, we know that many of you and your organizations may have found yourselves thinking about data differently. It's more important than ever to have solid information about your organization and the sector to make decisions. At the same time, your resources may be more constrained than ever, leaving little time to invest in collecting the data and analyzing it. If you're nodding in agreement, we're right there along with you. Our goal with streamlining the cultural data profile, or CDP as you may know it, is to strike a balance for our users by collecting high quality data that allows for us to have a better understanding of our sector, especially in the current times that we're facing. This allows for building strong advocacy narratives and informing cultural leaders who are facing tough decisions. At the same time, capacity and people power is a scarce resource now more than ever, and the value of the sector-wide data must be balanced with the efforts and resources required to collect it. The planned changes to our cultural data profile are a part of finding that balance. And with every step that we have taken to create that balance, we have kept our users in the forefront of our minds. Your feedback has been vital and critical to creating that balance. So as we prepare for these changes, we have created 4 30-minute webinars that explore the Streamlined survey, provides context to the different perspectives of organizations completing the survey. Today's webinar will focus on a broad overview of the changes, as well as the other webinars will look at data entry tips for audited organizations, unaudited, and organizations with under $50,000 in expenses. And we'll have one webinar dedicated to the new narrative sections within the CDP. Each webinar will be recorded for you to review and to share with any colleagues who are unable to join the live versions. So that brings us to our goals for today's webinar. We'll walk through the new Streamlined survey. We'll take a brief tour within the survey, exploring the new changes, the shortened sections that should make data entry easier. We'll take a moment to talk about digital programs and the changes that you can expect when entering that data. And finally, we'll then take a moment to talk about resources and support that are available to you in the data entry process. And that also includes the next set of webinars on Survey Streamline and what you can expect to learn from them. We will first get started by taking a look at changes to each section of the CDP. Before we walk through each section, let's take a moment to review 3 organizational types that will be completing the cultural data profile: audited organizations, unaudited organizations, and organizations with under $50,000 in expenses. Each of these categories of organizations will fill out a slightly different version of the CDP. Audited organizations are defined as an organization that engaged an independent accountant or accounting firm to audit or provide a financial review. Because they have been audited, they will have additional data points to enter into the CDP. For example, audited organizations are required to fill in audit totals in the revenue expense sections and the balance sheet sections. And within the balance sheet, they will enter their assets and liabilities in a 2-column format for unrestricted and restricted. Unaudited organizations are defined as organizations that has not engaged an independent accountant or accounting firm to audit or provide a financial review. This can include nonprofits who are not large enough to need an audit, as well as fiscally sponsored organizations or organizations who operate under a parent. When completing the CDP, an unaudited organization utilizes their internal financial records like bank statements, their 990s, and other record-keeping materials for their data entry. Because they have not been audited, unaudited organizations will complete a balance sheet in a single column. And finally, the last category of organizations who complete a CDP are organizations with annual expenses under $50,000. This would include nonprofits, fiscally sponsored organizations, or informal, unincorporated organizations. We separate these organizations into their own category because they often have less extensive financial data to input into the CDP. They will use internal financial records to complete the CDP. These organizations will not see an option to enter restricted revenue. They will complete a single column expense section without the 3 functional columns of program, general and administrative, and fundraising, and they will not complete a balance sheet. Now that we have explored some foundational understanding of the types of organizations, let's work our way through each section of the CDP. We'll start with the first section you'll complete, the revenue section. While we'll highlight a few changes here, the revenue section is probably the most unchanged in this new CDP. This is because the data collected in the revenue section is most frequently used for research, advocacy, and reporting to grant makers. We'll go section by section within the revenue section and point out a few changes. If your organization is audited, the first section you'll see within the revenue section is audit totals. These are line items that are currently within the CDP, though we have moved them to be within each specific section. As a reminder, these are high-level totals taken from your audit that will be used within the error check to verify that the data that you're entering is accurate. And again, this is only for audited organizations. The first section is the earned revenue section. There is less detail in this section as it used to contain 27 lines. It now only contains 14. Next is the contributed revenue. This section is largely unchanged for 2 reasons. These categories of contributed revenue are shared by many organizations, making them a useful way to compare to peers. And this data is a powerful tool for researchers to understand fundraising trends across the sector. There are a couple of changes we'd like to point out, though. We've made a change to the layout of the survey, with the number of contributors appearing in the same section as the contributed revenue. We have also added a line for special event revenue. In the previous profile, organizations were directed to report contributions from special events by source or in the other line. Special event revenue can be reported as gross or net in the new CDP. But if it is reporting by net, you'll be asked to specify the amount of expenses that were associated with your events, so the number can be standardized for comparison and research. The investment and non-operating revenue sections have both been reduced and now only contain 2 lines within each subsection. The non-operating revenue section will only appear if you state that you have non-operating revenue when you set up your survey. Next, we'll move on to the expense section. This is the section with the most reduction in detail. The expense section is still subdivided into personnel and non-personnel expenses. We'll look at personnel expenses first. One thing you'll notice here is that we have retained the 3-column functional expense format of program, management in general, and fundraising. For organizations over $50,000 in annual expenses, this format enables key insights like return on fundraising and investment in programs. And it is fairly standard in other organizational reporting, such as audits and 990s. The personnel expense section remains very similar. Though we have combined the salary and fringe line items, we still ask you to report the total amount you paid to visual and performing artists. But this has always been simplified somewhat. Before, there were multiple columns here to reflect the different kinds of artists. Now, it is just one total amount. Now, we'll come to the non-personnel expenses. The detail collected in this section has been reduced dramatically, from 17 lines now to 4. In this section, we have retained a few key lines that provide insight into an organization's financial picture, including depreciation, interest, expense, etc. We have also retained the occupancy line, as it is a standard line for many organizations. All other details have been removed. Tracking details about spending is key to financial stewardship, but because these details are often very specific to each organization's operations, this data was not frequently used in our research or comparative tools. So we opted to remove it to save organizations time when entering their data. We've retained a question that asks organizations to report the portion of its expense associated with marketing. This data allows us to provide insights into marketing activities across the sector. We have also retained a question added earlier this year about digital program expenses. Again, this is optional. If your organization had non-operating expenses or below the line items, you'll be able to reflect that in the CDP through this section that has been streamlined just to one line. And now we'll move on to the balance sheet. There have been a number of line items removed from the balance sheet. It has been reduced from 23 lines to 16. Reducing this level of detail will save time for organizations who are matching their financial statements to the CDP, and we will still be able to calculate many key financial health metrics, such as working capital. We have removed the loans, fixed assets, and endowment detailed sections. While these can be important aspects of an organization's financial picture, these details are also available in the organization's audit and have not been used extensively for research. We will retain a few key details about line of credit limit and accumulated depreciation of fixed assets. Moving on to the next section, workforce. For those familiar with the CDP, this section was once called People and Places. but has been updated to workforce and workspaces. Within the workforce section, we have retained the same line items, but we have removed the hours worked column. You will only need to report the number of positions, not the number of hours that staff worked. We have added a new column for workforce turnover. Here, you will report the number of individuals who have left their positions within each fiscal year. This is a new set of questions that we added last summer. These questions ask you to quantify the effects of the COVID-19 crisis on your workspace and workforce. We have also added a new set of questions about your organization's leadership. Here, we're asking for information on whoever has the highest decision-making authority at your organization. We ask for some basic information about your leader, as well as the year they started. If you have a shared leadership structure where two people share equal decision-making authority, you can enter two co-leaders. The workspace section is very similar to the current survey. You can enter up to 5 workspaces, and you can pre-fill this section with the address entered during the organization setup. That now brings us to our final section, program activity and audience. This current survey includes a very customized program activity section with 32 possible sections to complete based on the type of program activities for each organization. This provides a lot of opportunity for customization, but we have also heard from our users that distributing questions across all of those different sections made the current survey difficult to complete. The new program activity section will have a few standard sections for everyone. So let's take a look. The first section asks for pricing information for your tickets, membership, and subscriptions. The next section asks for information about your membership and subscription programs. This includes the total count of members and subscribers during the year, as well as a renewal rate, or the percentage of last year's members or subscribers who signed up again. Again, renewal rates are optional. Next is the program section. Again, this is different than the current survey because there is only one standard section for everyone. You can leave any line items that are not applicable to you and your organization blank. For many programs in this section, we are now collecting information about the number of in-person and digital programs. This distinction has become especially important during this year as many organizations have transitioned their program activities to online. For in-person programs, you will also enter both the number of unique programs and the total number of programs offered. For example, if an organization had one show, but offered that same show at 4 different times, they would report one unique program with 4 times offered. Finally, for digital programs, there is also a distinction between live streamed and on-demand programs. Live stream means that the attendees have to be seeing your program as it is being performed or taught. An on-demand program is something that is pre-recorded and can be watched at any time of the viewer's choosing. We are actually recording this webinar now, so the recording of the webinar would be considered an on-demand offering. Let's look at a couple examples of how organizations may record their programs. Our first example is a season of theaters. This organization produced 2 different shows in the fiscal year, so they would enter a 2 in the unique offering column. Each of these shows had 3 show times, which means that they offered 6 in total. So they would enter a 6 in the number of times offered column. This organization also invested in live stream for one of their shows, and viewers were able to watch live from home as the show was being performed. Since they only did this for one of their shows, they would enter a 1 in the unique live stream column. But since they offered this live stream 3 times, they would enter a 3 in the number of times live streamed. Finally, this organization recorded both of their shows this year, and the recordings were made available on demand or for viewing whenever the audience member chose to watch them. So they would enter a 2 here. Notice that even if the on-demand content is a recorded version of an in-person or live stream recording, they are still counted here. Let's look at one more example, an arts education example. This organization has 2 different classes they're offering on different topics. So they enter 2 in the distinct offerings. They hold 2 sessions of each class throughout the year, which makes 4 sessions total. So they enter a 4 in the number of times offered column. They also offered 3 online classes this year. They are not recorded, but must be attended in real time. So they enter them under the live stream category. One class was so popular, they held a second session. So they held 4 classes in total. So they would enter a 4 in the number of times live streamed column. And finally, they did not offer their classes for later viewing. So they would actually leave that column blank. In the current version of the CDP, you entered your attendance separately for each kind of program. In the new version, you will enter all of your attendance numbers in one place for your programs. You will divide your attendance between in-person and digital attendance. You will also divide each line between paid and free attendance. We also ask that you break out the number of attendees who were under the age of 18, as well as the number of attendees who attended programming within schools. There is also a new question that asks if your organization creates work or has a mission rooted in a specific ethnic, cultural, or demographic voice. For example, this may be an African American art museum or an LGBTQ history archive or a Mexican folk music ensemble. If you select yes, you'll be asked to specify which demographic group. Finally, we ask if your mission is primarily to serve a specific demographic group. This question is not new to the CDP, but we have made some updates to the demographic categories used. Here, we specify that you would only select a group if serving them is your primary mission, or if over 25% of your total participants are from that group. And finally, we have also added a question, which has been active in the survey since this past summer, about the impacts of COVID-19 and any impact that it has had on your programming. That concludes our tour of the new cultural data profile, but I do want to highlight a few new features within the survey. First, the new survey includes in-depth definitions on every line. You can click the question mark next to each line to see the definition. The definitions provide basic instructions about what goes into every line, but we know that some line items may need further explanation. So at the top of each subsection, there is a link that says more help on this section. that will take you to a page in our knowledge base with articles about most frequently asked questions for each section. And finally, we are certain that many of our questions need more explanation. We have included more help text within the survey itself, as well as easy, accessible links to additional information. Another new addition to the DataArts profile is the narrative fields that allow you to add more context and explanation within your reports to funders. These fields are optional and will appear in the revenue, expense, balance sheet, and program activity sections of the profile. The last webinar within our 4-part series will dive into more depth about the narrative fields. These new funder report narratives are different from the internal note features within the survey. Internal notes allow you to leave notes just for your use. These note features will still be available in the survey. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening to your current data. All of your current data will be transformed to the new format. This will mean that trend reporting will still be possible from one format to another in your funder reports, and we will make available a data transformation manual that will provide details about how the transformation happened. Notations about how data was transformed have been left in the notes field we've just looked at. If you need access to your data in the previous format, you can contact the Support Center and it can be shared with you in an Excel or CSV file, or we can share specific data points with you. Here's a little bit about the next steps from now. You can download a copy of the new data profile so that you can see what line items will be collected in depth. We have set aside 2 weeks to transform your previous data and implement the new survey. You should plan for the CDP platform to be down for both of these weekends. You can log in on December 21st to see your data in the new format. We will also send you an email when the transformation has been complete. We also have 3 more webinars about the new survey coming up. You can attend them as they are or watch them as a recording closer to the time that you plan to enter your data. This will conclude our first webinar in the Streamline series. On our screen, we have what's coming next. Thank you for your time.